Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the Mike Armstrong podcast show. And this evening or afternoon stateside, we're joined by Kevin Mclemore and Theo, his son. They are podcasters of the Kevin and Son podcast. They're also entrepreneurs based out of New York for Theo and Pennsylvania for Kevin. And Kevin is an author and does a bit of acting as well, and an entrepreneur. And Theo is a chef and an entrepreneur, and they're both going to be up and coming superstar podcasters. So how are you two guys doing today? You okay?
We're doing great.
We're doing great. Thank you for having us.
Yeah.
No problem at all. And thank you for coming. And thank you for being only my second guests on my podcast, where there's been a three-way chat. So I've had one before, but you're the second, guys. And nice to get you on my podcast, and great to put a face to the voice, Kevin, as we've been speaking a lot on Clubhouse. And great to
Yes.
you. And looking forward to our chat. So tell us a little bit about the podcast, as that's something that you're now doing as a project together. Tell us about how that come about and what it's going to be about.
I'll go ahead and take this one. It was originally created when I released my book, Indispensable Games of X's and O's, and it was just going to be talking wit, W-I-T, Kevin. And the reason why it's talking wit instead of with is because I've been in the fitness business for over 40 years, and I didn't want to continue to talk fitness. And I wanted a platform to talk about my book. But during the pandemic, I realized a couple of things. One, I did miss my son. And then I wanted to create an opportunity to whereas I can pass on the knowledge that was passed on to me that's inside my book to my son without preaching to him. So I figured, I can put it in the book, or I can bring him to work with me every day so he can experience it firsthand. So I decided to give him a job.
Yeah, well, that's really good. That's the fatherly thing to do, isn't it? So What about yourself, Theo? How was that sold to you?
So, he's just very persistent in pushing me into doing something with him, first of all, which I'm never opposed to doing. He always has pretty good ideas. I would consider myself a dreamer, and I would honestly say I definitely got that from him. So don't have a lot to complain about there. But I think the main thing that really drove me to want to do this with him is we have a connection, being the son of a African-American man in America, where there's a big problem with African-American fathers leaving their children to be raised by a single mother and not being around and not being there to support them. So I looked at it as an opportunity to share my story as somebody who was blessed with the opportunity to have my father in my life and having somebody so involved in my life. So I'm taking that as an opportunity to share my story with other people. So it doesn't seem like it's some sort of like fantasy narrative, like it just doesn't happen. Like people like us do exist, and there's very important aspects of our story that need to be told that show the importance of having a connection with not only father and son, but like mother and daughter, father and daughter, and even just friend to friend,
Yeah, definitely. Well, like you said, there's stereotypes and whatever, and stereotypes they do form out of things happening. They are based on some element of truth, if you like. Otherwise it wouldn't form as a stereotype, because a stereotype is something that gets repeated a lot. But there's also the anti-stereotype, the opposite of the stereotype, and that needs to be aired and shown as well. That is part of the dynamics of life, the fact that there are stereotypes, but there are opposites as well. There are there's the mean, the medium, and the mode of average, if you like. And just because something is the most often, it doesn't mean that the least often doesn't happen. And sometimes people just on the stereotype, forgetting about the fact that yes, there is plenty of other fathers who are with their children and whatever. So it could be for a stereotype to form, it could be 60-40. That 40% is still there, but everyone's still thinking about the 60%.
Yeah, but believe it or not, part of the reason we're doing this is to defunct the bias, because it's just not with the African American race. It's generational with all the races. Is that there's situations that sometimes push a male out of the life of a child, instead of embracing them and welcoming them in. And I think through the power of our story, I think our biggest gift is, no matter what the dynamics are, you know, we struggle to have that good fight every day to stay in their life. I think through example, if a child that's without his father doesn't necessarily have to live his life without a father. You know, my father stepped in as a coach, and then my uncle stepped in as a father, and then my cousin stepped in as a father when my father passed away. So a father doesn't have to be genetically attached to you. He has to be emotionally attached to you. And I think if we tell these stories and we get to share these stories, we put aside the bias, we change the narrative as far as that conversation, and we eliminate the stereotype, especially if we can open the eyes to everyone else. We're not going to be perfect, but we are going to be authentic and genuine.
Yeah, and also, you know, at the end of the day, you know, sometimes the stereotype of fathers being absent, if you like, may focus on the father, but there's two to tango and there's two to blame, and sometimes some of those absent fathers are down to the present mothers as well, because some present mothers don't want the fathers in the life as well, and can make things difficult. So
You're exactly
all
right.
sorts of dynamics at the end of the day, and just for something to be a stereotype shouldn't be a reflection of everybody, because just because something does happen, you know,
Yep.
doesn't mean that it doesn't happen as well, you know. So there always has to be a yin to the yang, and like you
Yeah.
said,
Yeah.
you know, it's not a trend that somehow it seems to have been pinned on maybe black males to a point, but it's a trend that happens to males as well, and there's all sorts of different dynamics in
And
different relationships, and that's what, you know, I hate lazy journalism, lazy thought processes, lazy things that take a probability of a majority and use that as a narrative to the story, forgetting about the rest of the story. So I hate it anyway in all aspects of life, whether it be any storytelling. But that's what happens with media. You remember the headline, you remember the majority or the something, and you forget about the actual reality of the big picture and the full picture.
yeah, we're going to bypass the media, and believe it or not, there's a lot of positive stories that are out there. I have a lot of acquaintances that their fathers are very they're famous or very successful in business, and we get a chance to share those stories on a positive point as to a young man or daughter that has to live with a famous father. So we're not necessarily looking at all the stories of single fathers or whatever. We're looking at positive relationships, and we're telling those stories. And at the same time, through our podcast, our viewers become our friends. They get a chance to see life with Theo, life with Theo's dad, and then life with Kevin and Theo as friends and men growing up.
Yeah, brilliant. Yeah, so it's nice to. It's always good to give people positive role models, etc. You know, everyone needs every race, every color, every age, every, you know, person from states, and however people bond and connect. It's always good to offer different narratives to the mainstream narrative, and different role models for people to engage with, follow, look up to, etc. So yeah, you know, I see what you're doing, and I think it's great. And yeah, it's anything which challenges the typical stereotype and mainstream and lazy journalism and any of that sort of stuff
Yeah.
is always
Yeah,
good in
exactly.
my book. So yeah, that's a bit about the podcast. Tell us a little bit about yourselves. Maybe we start with Kevin and then you, Theo. Tell us a little bit about your life. You're obviously an author. We met on Clubhouse as well. Tell us a little bit about, you know, how you become an author and what the book's about and all of that. And then Theo, you can tell us the same about what you're doing, etc. So people can get a little bit of a flavour for sort of the backstory to who you are and how you ended up coming together for this collaboration.
Well, on my end, believe it or not, I was probably the last person on earth that you would ever think that was an author. I struggled during school. I was not, like my son, an A/B student. I did not have a high IQ. I was extremely talented as an athlete. So everything I learned about life, I learned playing high school football. My first book was a book titled Letters to Elvis. I met a group of people that were fans, and I wrote about as fans. First time it's ever been done. My second was a Christmas novel. It's not a children's book, it's a Christmas novel. I took what was lost in the spirit of Christmas and I created a whole nother story. It's called Sprinkles, the True Spirit of Christmas. My third book that was just recently released, it came out during the pandemic. It's Indispensable, Games of X's and O's. How I learned everything about life. I learned playing high school football. And basically, the book is the story of my life. It was transposed from my journal from 1973 to March 1st, 2019, was my last entry in my journal. 2019, March 2nd, I suffered a major concussion and basically kind of rebooted my headspace. And I discovered I had written this wonderful novel manuscript, and it turned into a book. And the book has less to do about football, more about the choices you make and then how you react to these choices. So basically, it provides an avenue of hope for a person that basically is living in an environment that they think is hopeless. And our mission statement is hope, helping other people every day. And that's my story. It's Kevin and Theo. Take your show away.
So I think, okay, well, first of all, I think he left out a little bit about his backstory. I was lucky enough to be raised in a good household between both my parents. They're both very successful in everything that they've tried to, but I think what my dad left out a little bit was, so I don't know, I think he's being a little humble about his life story. He went from being a star college athlete and out of college joining the NFL, played football in the NFL for a year and a half, and then went on to power or bodybuilding, modeling, acting, you name it. He was training soon to be superstars. He was in New York City killing it. So as his child, that kind of gives me a big set of footprints to step into. So the main benefit of having somebody so driven and dream oriented in my life was that he's always pushed me to be the absolute best that I can, and always pushed me to be better than anybody next to me, which I think is a very important thing, a lot of very important lessons to have in life, specifically coming from a male father figure, or it doesn't have to be male, it could come from anywhere, anyone you feel is important to you in your life. So through high school, played football, he pushed me, he trained me, I did everything I could. I ended up getting injured, so my football career didn't go past high school. After high school, I took a little time off to figure out what I wanted to do. I did some volunteer work in the Dominican Republic, rebuilding schools and building houses, like walking into communities where they live their whole lives in shanty shacks with dirt floors, never set foot on concrete like a day in their life. And we went in and essentially laid out floors, we built bottle schools, and then we just got a chance to interact with the people that live there and really get a real understanding of how they feel and what their needs are and what they can do. So after that, I spent a little bit more time at home, just working in town, trying to figure out what I'm going to do, where I want to take my life. And then it came down to the point where my mom was like, you either get a job, go to college, or move out. So I figured the cheapest option for me, since she was willing to help with school, was to go to school. And I never felt like I fit into the traditional schooling. And I always felt like I was more of a hands-on kind of person. So that drove me to make the decision to go to culinary school. So go through culinary school, and I come out, I get a great job from the start that my dad actually helped me get in contact with the owner of the restaurant. It was a fine dining Italian restaurant in Pennsylvania going through. And it really gave me a chance to hone my skills right off the bat, right out of school. It really gave me a high intensity environment to really learn everything I could possibly learn, which gave me a great start in the industry. And from there, I've managed 2 other restaurants, and to the day at 24 years of age, I've ran 2 restaurants as a head position. And now, due to the COVID climate, it's been a little iffy here and there with the restaurants, which a lot of restaurants are starting to open up as restrictions are lifted. And I've been working in doing a lot of private dining, trying to do something for myself, because I've gotten to the point where I really realized in life where I don't want to be working for somebody else for the next 10 years. I want to do something for myself and build something to leave something for my kids and their kids, and really have something that I can go home and go to bed at night and feel good about myself. And I think that's what we're trying to accomplish here with the Talking with Kevin and Son podcast, is create a legacy, you know, create something for other people to push towards and for us to push towards, honestly. Just gives us a goal to create a positive environment in a sea of darkness. Basically, there's a whole lot of negative going on out there, which seems to stay the mainstream kind of attitude towards things. But I think the important thing we have to give is a different perspective, which is really the main focus. So I think I'm very excited to get this started, and I can't wait for other people to join in on our podcast and share their stories and bring it all together and see what we can build, you know?
Yeah, brilliant. Well, it's always good and exciting to be at the beginning of building something. So
Oh yeah.
that's fantastic. And I think, yeah, with you having the skills, you know, to do some fine dining, then, you know, if you can build your own brand and, you know, maybe do that as a side hustle, and, you know, as you get bookings for, you know, the odd evening, Friday evenings or weekends or whatever, which is when people, you know, maybe predominantly want that type of service, then you can
exactly
do that as and when required around everything else, and then build that up. And over time, you could employ other people to do some fine dining. If you get more demand than you've got supply, then you're able to do yourself. You could take somebody on and train them, and you could build your own business, you know, doing that down the line, which puts you in control of a side hustle, which could turn into a full-time hustle. And you could build the podcast at the same time, which could help you build the one and the other. So that all sort of fits nicely together.
Yep, you're right. You're right.
Yeah, great, because you could put the advertising for the side hustle and the books and stuff in between your episodes and around your episodes, and talk about that at the same time as talking about, you know, your subject matter, because that just diversifies the podcast and keeps it interesting and keeps it about the main protagonists and what they're doing in the rest of their lives, and not just in that relationship, which is obviously the focal point of the podcast.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, we're trying to create a nice symbiotic relationship.
Yeah, we could do cooking with Theo.
Yeah, we'll get there. Maybe a YouTube channel.
You could do a little recipe every now and then. Stick that in as well, and the father and son cooking recipes.
Oh gosh, got to teach him how to cook.
I know how to eat. That's all that matters.
Yeah.
That's what I always say. I love it when people say, you know, I'm a great cook. I go, well, that's good, because I'm a great eater.
There you go.
I know as well, because we've spoken quite a bit on Clubhouse, Kevin. I know you've got some interesting guests lined up for your podcast as well. So what's the sort of plans and the forecast for the guests and the conversations and all that? Tell us a little bit of what you got planned.
We have a couple people lined up. I got a couple NBA players that I'm friends with, that I know their sons, that they're going to be introduced. We've had a conversations with an individual. I'm trying to get Nelson Mandela's son on the line. We've because of time difference, we've had a couple missteps, so we're working that out. A young lady that has a very strong business in the cosmetic industry. She's a single mom raising a daughter, and she has a single son, a son. And she has a group of journals talking about the life between her and her son. And then there's a host of some other people coming down the line, but that's where we're starting out.
Okay, good. So leveraging a few of your sporting connections, if you like, to get a couple of names on them as well. And you mentioned you played football for a while. What team was that for? Was that New York or somewhere else?
No, I had a tryout. I don't consider myself a player, but I had a tryout with the Detroit Lions. So, and then I got lucky enough to spend 5 years as a unofficial conditioning coach with Major League Baseball via Julio Franco. So I've been very lucky. I started doing TV early on with the Morning Exchange in Cleveland. I went from Cleveland to a soap opera, One Life to Live, and then Guiding Light. And I got lucky enough to have a part in a Woody Allen movie. I had another part, which my sons got a chance to see, a movie with Mark Wahlberg called Invincible, which we're good friends with Vince Papale. And I don't know if my acting career is over, Doing that movie, I fell back in love with acting. So I hope that the freedom I have right now, that I still got enough in me to get those opportunities. But my biggest thing is to teach my son how to be an entrepreneur, let him live his life on his own terms, and let the world see how great this individual is as a human being. So that's my motivation. That's my why. And, hopefully we'll impact someone else's son or daughter, or maybe, make a difference in someone else's life.
Yeah.
We're looking for sponsors, but I have a key requirement with sponsors. If there's no action behind your words, then I'm not looking for that type of sponsor. So we're looking for people that want to give back, to be part of this dream. And we're actually starting a podcast network that we have 10 dynamic individuals that are just starting out, or mid-level podcasters that will be part of our RMK Productions, and that's going to be announced very soon. So you're the first to hear that story beyond this, and we're going to do some dynamic things. And my son, he's got 30 years in front of him. I don't have those same 30 years, and I'm hoping that in a couple of years I can retire, sit back and watch him do his thing, and you can interview him when it's just Theo, and maybe one day Theo and his son or daughter.
Yeah. Well, that would be a good way, a good baton to pass down. But it's funny. A friend of mine actually runs a Detroit Lions on the Prowl podcast. So that's a connection there. That's funny how is the team, and
I would love to talk to him.
yeah. Okay. Well, I'll have to hook you up, and also I myself come close. I had a Welsh rugby union trials when I was a kid, and that's one of my biggest regrets. I didn't end up going on to be a pro rugby player, because I know I would have been awesome. But I think sometimes missteps and missing out on certain things can really drive you to do other things, which can be really good. It's really good fuel for your rocket.
Life is all about giving a chance, and that's, if we create opportunities for ourselves and doors open. That's one of the things I love about Clubhouse. It's because Clubhouse is that, when they talk about 6 degrees of separation, Clubhouse is that next door that will open, and that next person behind that can basically change your life.
Yeah, I call Clubhouse more like two degrees of separation. You're almost like connected to everybody through Clubhouse, because Clubhouse has got all the influencers of all the sectors there, and all the influencers know everybody. So you're only one person removed from everybody in that place, which is why I love it.
Yeah, well, just wait until everyone meets my son through this interview. I mean, now we're speaking across the pond, so Theo is now global.
Exactly. And that's it. Yeah, that's like me. I love it now. I've gone global since the start of the pandemic, and my podcast and networking and speaking at events and stuff. So much more easier to go global now than it used to be. You don't even got to leave the house.
Nope. You don't have to decipher emails, texts, whatever. You get a chance. And the nice thing about Clubhouse is that you can hear the truth in a person's voice versus having to decipher what comes across in a text or an email. So that's the beauty of Clubhouse. There's so many genuine people, and there's always going to be those that are kind of sketchy, but the masses are positive, and this is a good thing. And people are open to helping other people. It's just not about me. And we have to realize on this planet, if we continue to be singular in our focus, then the planet is going to die. If we decide that we're going to create alliances, then the planet will thrive. And so is humanity.
Yeah, definitely. That's what I love about it. If you're good at reading people, I've been in sales and marketing all my life, then generally you can tell from the voice. You can't tell that from Instagram, from pictures. People can put all sorts of things in and display all sorts of angles, and all you're seeing, you're seeing the pen, if you like, where, there's a nib on the one side, but if you're looking at one side, you can't see it. Yeah, you only see an angle from wherever you're seeing. But with a voice, there's no hidden sides or hidden angles or anything. You're seeing and hearing the genuine authenticity, and that makes a big difference. So, are you on Clubhouse yet, Theo, or not been on yet?
I have not been on very much. I'm on Clubhouse. I just don't get around to getting on there very much. I get a lot of my communication on there through my dad, but I should be on there much more often than I am. just slacking a little bit.
Yeah, I think what you should really do is set up a room together and talk about, the father and son dynamics and the launch of the podcast and, all that sort of thing. And you could come on and, engage with some people on Clubhouse and direct them to your podcast. Then that would be a really good, dynamic, really.
Yeah, I think that's what we're aiming towards.
Mike, I'm glad you said that because that was a very good idea.
Yeah, well, I've been known to come up with a few, so yes, to me, Clubhouse is like it's like a middle ground between radio, podcast, and networking. Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's like a middle ground, and so it's a great place to build a community and then to drive that community to somewhere else that you want them to go, as in a podcast right now, and whatever else, books and whatever else you do in the future. Once you've built a good community that's engaged with you and they like their content, your content, and they like your values and they like your authenticity or whatever resonates with them in you, then if you can build that tribe, as they call it these days, build that community, then you can always take that community into whatever it is that you do, as long as whatever it is that you do stays in alignment with that, that and everything else that you've built up in whichever platform.
Hey, Mike, I have a question for you, and only a couple of people on this planet can actually say this. Do you remember when you came into the world, who was the first person you met?
Yeah, I don't remember at all because I was a baby, but my guess is it was a midwife. It was a midwife. Yeah, probably a midwife, I would say.
Ask Theo if he remembers who it was.
Oh man, he tells this story to everybody. I can't.
He's a proud dad. He's a proud dad and a midwife. What can we say? I've heard the story.
Yeah.
But tell us for the listeners and the viewers what we're talking about.
So my dad was the one who delivered me. Actually, he set up. He was, I guess, good friends with the delivering doctor, right?
Yeah.
Which for some reason, he decided to be the big tough guy that he thinks he is and talk all this rah and say that I could do that. And then they stuck him in front of my mom and said, do it then.
It was called Open Your Mouth, Insert Your Foot, because my oldest son, Alex, was born. And when I got the bill, because I had horses and I had delivered a horse before, and going, I could have done this for what they charged me. I could have done it free. I was giving her a hard time, and she says, okay. You feel that confident? Go ahead. So I scrubbed up, put on the gown and everything and gloves, and I sat there and I kept waiting for her to stop me, and it never happened. And she said, well, as soon as the crown comes, put your hands there like you're catching a football, and she's going to push and it's going to come right out. And the first time that she pushed, Theo popped out into my hands, and I sat there and I wept like a baby. I cried all night long. Every award, every newspaper article, and I had this little shrine in my house. I went home that night and I put it in a box because I said I'm never going to do anything greater than what I just did tonight, is to bring my own child into the world. So
yeah, and, it's a good job you had ball handling skills, if you like, because you could have fumbled. That would have been a completely different story then.
Oh yeah, we'd have a whole different podcast.
So it's always good to have a laugh and a joke with people, isn't it? And what a special moment. And yes, like you said, whatever else you can do and achieve in life, it can't pale into insignificance sometimes. The most important things sometimes are the simple things, but the things that change our lives forever.
Yeah, but I gotta say, sometimes those simple things, you hear those simple things over and over and over and over, and those simple things get a little old.
That's dads for you. They like to put their big achievements across to you every now and then.
Oh yeah, I appreciate it. I appreciate the love.
Yeah, I do love him to death. I do. I am so proud of him. I mean, someone asked me on a podcast the other day who was my hero, and I had to think about it. Well, I really didn't have to think about it. I knew the answer. My son is my hero.
Oh, brilliant. Well, I think that's a lovely sentiment and a lovely place to actually to leave this conversation, with your son being your hero and you being the doting dad. So tell everyone a little bit about how they can connect with you, for the podcast and beyond.
Go ahead, Theo.
I think you have the links for everything. So we're on Facebook. Our page is Talking with Kevin and Son, or I think it's Talking with Kevin right now. I think we need to
Right,
edit
we're
that.
gonna change that.
And then we'll be releasing, or so we haven't released a podcast yet. We're working on getting that together now. So we will be posting on Instagram at PK Mclemore is the Instagram name. And then on Facebook, it's going to be on Kevin McLemore's page and the Talking with Kevin page.
Okay, yeah. So lots of places where people can find you. All they got to do, I guess, is go to their favorite search platform, Google or whatever.
Yeah, we're on everything, and he's on
it.
Clubhouse at all times, so I'm sure you'll see him in there.
Yeah, yeah. He's often in my room, which is called Screw the Big Rooms, and Kevin likes to come in and get involved in the conversation, like a lot of my regulars. I see it as the social area, a bit like a pub without the alcohol on Clubhouse, where everyone can come and have a chat. And at some point, what I should do is try and get an alcohol sponsor who can send
Yeah,
drinks to
You
people's
should.
houses.
Yes, you should.
Turn it into a proper pub, then, like But yeah.
Hey, Michael, I do have a podcaster that's joining me that he does CrossFit, and they did CrossFit and beer. He reached out to a sponsor. They supply him beer once a month as a sponsor. So you should actually reach out.
Yeah, definitely. If you can hook me up with that contact, that sounds great to me. If there's a sponsor that I can get on my podcast that's going to give me some beer, then I'm in.
All right. All right. Well, Michael, I thank you on the behalf of both Theo and myself. It's an honor and a privilege, especially to talk to you and your audience. I hope that something we've said adds value to at least one person's life, and you are a gift to this world, and we much appreciate you.
No, thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you both for coming on, and I'm pretty sure if people can connect with you and follow your podcast, I'm pretty sure they're going to find lots of nuggets and useful information, and they're going to see a real, authentic relationship between father and son, which needs to be, shown and given a bit of light as, as an alternative story and an alternative agenda, and give people something different to write about, because things aren't always black and white, and they're not always, one-sided or another. There's a big mix of things that are out there, and relationships and all sorts. So hopefully people will check in, they'll follow you, they'll get involved in the conversation on your Instagram and your socials, and just support you, because what you do is a great thing, and it's always good to have more African American, Black role models for people to follow and to enjoy. So keep up the great work. And thanks very much for coming on the podcast. And I look forward to maybe round 2, ding, 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 where we maybe have a chat about how you become record-breaking podcasters. Or
that'd be great.
That's the goal.
Yeah.
Well, we're going to share this link in our social media. We got quite a few people follow us, so you're going to get some new followers because you are a genuine and great guy. So we thank you for having us on, Theo.
It was great talking to you. I really appreciate this opportunity, and I was very happy to meet you.
Brilliant. Well, from across the pond, I wish you all the best for your project. And like I say, I look forward to seeing you again, and I'll enjoy catching up with you again, Kevin, on Clubhouse as and when.
All right. Reach one, teach one.
All the best. Bye-bye.
All right. Have a good night.